Welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm your host, Michelle Graves, nationally known as the Money Lady, and I remain committed to giving you, my viewers, cutting-edge information on financial issues, matters, and people that you need to know. So I welcome you into my world for the next hour, and we have an amazing show, as always, but this one is particularly special in as much as we're going to be talking about a disease that has become an epidemic in the United States of America. And that disease is Alzheimer disease. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it, may have family members or neighbors or church members who have been diagnosed with this terrible, terrible condition. But I felt that you needed to have the facts, because the truth of the matter is that Alzheimer disease will impact financially on a family, and you do need to know how to prepare adequately. So again, it's about having the good information to make you make informed decisions. Today I have as my guest Eric VanVlymen, Masters in Social Work. He is the Executive Director of the Alzheimer Association, Miami Valley chapter in Dayton, Ohio. And I'm honored to have him here as my guest, along with Mary Barr Rhodes, who has a mother who has Alzheimer. And Mary is a nationally acclaimed artist, and she had to make some very real personal and business decisions, including folding her practice to deal with this situation. So I'm excited about today's show, and just sit down and get a pencil, because there's some things you're going to want to write down and going to want to know about this disease and what you need to do. So I welcome you today.
Sure.
Glad to have you, and certainly glad that you were willing to be a part of our conversation. Where do we want to begin, Eric?
Sure. Alzheimer's, I'd really start with it is the top 10 diseases that people die from. It is the leading one that has no cure, and no treatment, and no prevention.
No cure,
no treatment,
and no prevention.
There are some drugs that treat symptoms, but they don't treat the disease. And we just keep, in the paper this morning I read, the newest trial did not show impact on people whose brains were already deteriorated. Maybe they're hopeful that they give them to them earlier. But so you have heart cancer, some of the other reasons that people, even Parkinson's, there are treatments for people. Their lives can be better. Stroke, whereas people used to die from strokes and stuff, they have the medications that if you get into the hospital in a certain amount of time, they can help the person. Alzheimer's, no cure, no prevention, no treatment. And I think that's one of the key pieces. The second piece that makes that the most frightening is that right now we have about 5.5 million Americans, and then with Mrs. Rhodes, we have 15 million caregivers in America.
15 million caregivers.
Yeah, think about that. And that's just the people who are, right, so you usually have one main caregiver and a couple people in the family that are helping, but then you have the whole family. That's going to triple by 2050 to 15 million people as the baby boomers age, 10,000 a day over the age of 65.
Correct.
And that's, people say, well, is it new? Did it, why the big, because of the boomer push. Because as boomers age into 65, we've allowed people to live longer, but now we've created a situation where our health and our heart and other things have kept us alive. For some, this disease comes by nature at the highest amount through age. And so, so we're looking at tripling. And as you said, this impacts families emotionally, physically, and financially, and they're not prepared for it.
Can I ask the question, because I have been a student of Alzheimer since the early 1990s. It was just beginning to show its face, and I was interested in it primarily from a clinical perspective, trying to understand how the brain worked. And when I saw under microscope what the ganglia looked like of a person with Alzheimer, it was horrific, absolutely horrific. Are there any indicators as to what causes this thing?
No.
No indicators.
So we know what it looks like.
We do.
When it's done. We know now, the research, we just had an international conference this July, and so the research is pushing back. So they're trying to go backwards from what we see to what are the processes that lead to that, but we still don't know. The amyloid plaque, which clumps up in the brain and causes problems, and then after that the tangles within the neurons begin to break down.
Right.
And so basically the brain cells lose function over time in a pretty consistent pattern. It's never perfect, or everybody experiences a little bit different. The key with it is that we now have biomarkers that can catch this disease before symptoms.
Really?
Yeah, now they're in research settings, so you can't go to your doctor today and say,
you know,
give me that test. I want the blood test.
I want that.
Yeah, I know. We'd have we'd have 1,000 boomers out there going, let me try, but I'm not going to tell anybody. Okay.
Right.
So we're not there yet. They've not been approved for general use. So if you go to a research center, they're still trying to figure out, because they don't want people to get a biomarker and say, hey, you have this, and then find out it was you know, a false negative or a false positive. You know, they want the information to be accurate. So that's what they're working on. We know that this disease, though, starts probably 20 years before we see the symptoms. It's probably a 30-year disease. So by your 50s, your 60s, you might have those plaques and tangles starting to accumulate. So for instance, with the drug that came out, and after, you know, years and years and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, they found it didn't work. Well, one of the reasons they think is they're giving it to a person after we've seen the symptoms. Well, once the symptoms are coming, the brain has already lost a certain amount of ability because of the destruction to the cells. So one of the ideas is if we can get people to detect earlier, then we could try trials on people much earlier and not wait until the destruction has happened, but try to get it to intervene before, when we can see the very early clinical symptoms, and that you know, can only be seen through the biomarkers. So it's really interesting. And so as with the Alzheimer's Association, we have an entire awareness campaign now as early detection matters. And so we're trying to even move the bar up a little bit, but we're not yet to the point that it's going to, you know, be to the clinical precursors, the biomarkers that we talk about.
Question, and that is, since there is no cure, and I hear this a lot, aging brings its own challenges. I do not do at 60 plus what I did in my 20s. That's good and bad. There's some things I don't want to do in my 20s.
Right.
I don't want to do that. But the question I have is, with aging also comes the issue of memory. Your hard drive is full.
Sure.
And so names and recollections are not as crisp as when you're younger. Why? Because you got a lot more inside. So what would you clarify for my viewers when a doctor says, oh, they just have dementia, which is often tossed around, as opposed to Alzheimer, which is my understanding is a subcategory of dementia. Can you give some information on? I know.
I love it. Most people don't get it, so I like that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let me talk about two things, or three categories instead of just the two. The first you mentioned is age-related memory issues.
Yes.
Right. So we used to go out. Our 10 warning signs. One of them used to be memory problems.
Okay.
Well, I would go out into a group of seniors and do a talk. And you would say, okay, number one is memory problems. And everybody would kind of like look and be like, okay. Number two is losing things, okay. And then number three is forgetting words.
Okay.
Okay, so now how many people over the age of 60 now have Alzheimer's, right? You know,
everybody.
Everybody. They're sitting in their chairs going, dear God, you know, get this guy out of here. So a couple years ago, they changed the They changed the 10 warning signs. They made them better. And so now it's memory problems that cause, memory issues that cause problems in daily life.
Okay.
Okay, so as you age, your knees slow down,
Yes.
Right? Your metabolism slows down,
Uh-huh.
and that's what I at least blame my problems on. But so those things slow down as you age. Well, so does your brain. So you said it's not as crisp. You might take longer to recall.
Yeah.
Interesting that studies actually show that as you age, though, once you get it, you will retain it far longer than a young kid who can pick it up quickly.
Huh.
They'll pick it up quickly and out it goes. As you age, when you learn something, you have a much higher chance of retaining that. And so
that's a positive.
That's a positive. Yeah. I
like
got
that.
asked. I'm doing a talk.
That
when
has
you're
meaning.
older.
Absolutely. And so, well, because you know you want to care about what you're learning. But
Yeah.
anyway, so on to the issue is that as you age, what happens is if you start worrying about Alzheimer's, one of the things that stores information in your brain is being relaxed. So when you're anxious, things don't store as well. Well, I think sometimes what happens is people start worrying, and once they start worrying, right, then every memory slip they have, they begin to worry, and then they get anxious, and when you get anxious, your memory banks aren't encoding everything as well.
That's very interesting.
It's interesting, isn't
That
it?
is, I think that's
So
very interesting.
we do a whole
Eric.
talk, we created a talk called Creativity, Aging, and the Brain, and so we talk about these three aspects, and then how, as you age, you bring creativity in to bring the best out of your brain and the best out of your life. And so anyway, so that's the first part, and I've found that as I start to share that with a group, they're like, oh, okay. So the next stage is when your memory is causing issues that create problems in daily life. Now, these are the things that we see. Somebody who's out driving and they get lost.
Okay.
So, somebody who's told, right, yeah, that happens, but, they're going to the grocery store a mile down the road.
Oh, now that's a problem.
Okay, that's a problem.
Yeah.
They, we've all kind of repeated a story before. They repeat the story and they have no clue that they've done it. You see things with judgment in the early stages. What happens is the memory issues that they're having, and memory is not just short-term. There's long-term, short-term procedural. So you process. That's one of the reasons driving's impacted in the early part. So you have these issues with memory, but they begin to cause problems in day-to-day life. Families pick up on it in the early stages, but they just think mom's getting older, and so they start helping. Right, so mom's not getting the food into the house like she used to. She's not eating well. So they start helping. Well, that's actually an issue of procedural memory. The process of getting to the grocery store, making your list, ordering what you need, having it, bringing it home. That's a whole issue. Keeping your house, making sure the grass is cut and things are taken care of. You start seeing those things slip, and everybody again chalks that up as just normal aging. If they're physically able to do it, but they can't somehow seem to coordinate it, that's where that procedural memory comes in. Of course,
that's called procedural
memory. Yeah,
memory.
Executive functioning is another way for it. It's the ability to order steps, and that begins to get impacted by the disease, and that's why you see a lot of 10 warning signs. So that's where the difference is you might be having some memory slips and stuff. You might be concerned about that. If it's not impacting your day-to-day life, you don't need to worry about it. If you're working, I got somebody stop me and said, I know somebody. Actually, I was home with my brother, and he said he was talking to somebody, and they were actually, this woman was working in a job, and she's done this job for 25 years.
Okay.
They were sending her out with a list. They had to get her a list of the 3 things she had to do when she left. Now, they never had to do that before. And then they'd send her out, and then they found out they'd have to send her with a list of the 3 things and then what to do under each of the 3.
Okay.
Right?
Actual implementation
Actual
steps.
implementation.
Okay.
That's a bad sign.
Okay.
There's something going on.
Okay.
So now that leads to your question, is that dementia? Is it Alzheimer's? We know this, that dementia is, as you said, it's really, it's the broader category. It in itself is not a disease. There's always something that causes dementia. There's something behind it. There is reversible dementias and irreversible dementias. So reversible, drug interactions. There are actual drugs, the acetylcholine that is worked on, the drugs that we have now work on the acetylcholine in the brain, and they allow it to kind of stick around a little longer, and that helps our memory. So there are drugs that work against the acetylcholine that dry it up, namely incontinence drugs. So you get a person, right, 65, 70 years old, they might have a problem with incontinence, they go in, the doctor gives it to them. 3 months later, they're coming back saying, I have memory issues. That doctor says, okay, let's write a script and put you on the Alzheimer's drug. And that's what's happening, is without good diagnosis.
Wow.
That could be completely reversible.
My goodness.
Okay,
so
drugs, drug interactions, so you could
Okay.
get on some, when I used to work with a facility and we'd get somebody in, sometimes they'd come in with 17 different drugs.
Oh my goodness
And 22,
gracious.
24, 12. I mean, you see it all over the place, okay? There's got to be some bad mojo in the medicine there.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one of the first things you want to look at is drug interactions. Is there some drug causing it or a combination of them? Depression, and this is really what's hard. Dr. Lawhorn, who's on our board and does a lot of assessments, he's like, this is the very hard part. They're older, they might be 65, and they're depressed. Are they depressed because their memory, because depression kind of goes along with Alzheimer's. Are they depressed because their memory is slipping, or is their memory slipping because they're depressed? In the early stages, it's hard to differentiate. So
can depression, long-term depression, be a trigger for this potentially?
I don't know if it could be a trigger for it, but it can mask. So, right, so we know if you have depression, you're going to want to socially withdraw.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
If you socially withdraw, that's bad for your brain. So let's say you're 70 years old, right? A good number of your friends have died, right? So your world's starting to shrink a little bit, and that has its own issues. Your knees aren't working as well, so you're not wanting to get out, so you start sticking around the house and watching too much of any of the news stations. Any of them will make you depressed. And so, watching all those news stations all day. So you sit around, and then you start getting into depression, and then the depression, right? That's isolation is the worst thing you can do for a person's brain. Just a healthy, normal brain. Isolation really does it in. Now, if they have some clinical Alzheimer's underneath it, it could it could expose it, or it could just be masking. So that's where it's really important, so just having memory issues is not the deal. It's really important to get a good diagnosis to understand. So there's the irreversible type, or the reversible types. Okay, and those are a couple of the common ones. That's why you go and see a doctor. And so
a
if you're
gerontologist, perhaps?
we have a list of doctors at the Alzheimer's Association if people call our helpline.
Okay.
And
what number is that?
that's 800-272-3900. And that is a 24/7 nationwide number. So
give me that number again.
Sure, 800-272-3900.
800-272-8900.
Yep.
Viewers, you want to write that number down. Write that number down, because that may be your help. Okay.
Yeah, and that's 24/7, it's nationwide. So if
Okay.
you call and you're in Dayton, you'll go to Dayton. If you call and you're in Kansas, you'll go to the Kansas chapter.
Got
and
it.
it's answered 24/7. So
Excellent.
Anyway, so we have a list of doctors. You can start with your regular doctor. If you feel like they're just, if they tell you, oh, you're just getting older, don't worry about it. It's time. If you're worried about it, you worry about it and go talk to someone else.
That's the counsel I gave to a couple that called me in panic last night. He said his mother was checking his father out of a nursing home. His father had Parkinson's. He said, I think my mother has, and I said, oh, Alzheimer, and she's checking your dad out. What does her doctor? I said, have you had a clinical evaluation of your mother? And he said, my mother will not go to anyone but her doctor, who's a general practitioner. And I counseled him. I said, I'm going to talk about this because you need a clinical evaluation of your mother and a formal diagnosis of that
because
condition.
Otherwise he can't intercede, because it's her and his father's business. It's not his. And
just unbelievable.
I'm telling you, our financial and our legal world is not, they have no clue that there's a huge tidal wave coming. And they don't understand. Our systems were not set up for people to live to 80, 85 years old and
agree.
have memory issues.
I
And
agree, Eric.
you know, I was just at the State House yesterday working with a group of people. They're really leading it. The association was going on behalf of our families, saying we've got to deal with this. And it was around guardianship. And it's amazing. People have no clue what's coming.
Would you? I want to
Sure.
talk to Mary, but I want us to come back to this issue of the legalities and the financial impact.
Absolutely.
And I want to just, Mary, you made a major business decision, major, as a nationally acclaimed artist with a thriving practice in the area of contemporary high-end art, to deal with your mother. And would you care to share your journey?
It has been a journey. It's been about 10 years. My father passed away, and my mother, who had never lived alone, wanted to live alone. And we honored that. Well, now I look back and think that might have been a major mistake, but that's what she wanted. And she didn't, and my mother was not a social being anyway.
Oh, yeah.
She has been a social being, so her world just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we started noticing things. She had always been very neat housekeeper and kept everything nice and neat, and the house was going down. And she called me one day. She was in Reading, lost in the car, which is only minutes from our home in Wyoming. And so all of a sudden these things started happening, and I took her and had her evaluated. And you know, she was formally diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which at the time, you know, I learned that dementia is forgetting, but then, and I want to make sure this is correct, that Alzheimer's is when you forget, like you forget your keys, but with Alzheimer's you forget what the keys are for. So there's a really difference in forgetting something, but then forgetting what it's even for, you know. And so I realized I needed to do something, but she had never, ever wanted to look at assisted living. She was there when my father passed away to the very end, and that's what she wanted. And so I didn't feel like I even had a choice.
Right.
So I had a 5,000 square foot studio downtown. I run a graphic design firm and communications and fine art, and I had to shut down that whole work.
Wow.
Had to shut down everything and just stop life. Because she couldn't move in with me. It really wasn't the appropriate environment for her to move in with me. So I said, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And so I shut down everything. I have stuff in storage. I still have a gallery at Bromwell's downtown. I have stuff at my mother's house. She lives in a small home, and it has disrupted my life unbelievably. But it was still the right decision by all means. And so I'm just now kind of coming out of that. I moved, you know, I was from like last August, I was going back and forth. And then I realized the going back and forth, it was just too much. I couldn't do it. So finally I moved in January, and it's 24/7. And I had gotten to the point where, you know, and it's really funny because, you know, you think I was preparing meals, I was cleaning house, I was doing everything. And she's 88, she has significant heart disease, and now a nodule on her lungs, which was diagnosed 3 months after I moved in. I thought I was going for the Alzheimer's, and realized, well, there's more than Alzheimer's.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So, and after her stay in the hospital, when I learned the other aspects, that took even more attention. And so, because there, you know, isn't really anything they can do for the lung cancer because of the weak heart. So I went on my mission to surround her with flowers and birds and hummingbirds, and because she always liked nature, and worked outside the home, you know, in the yard during the summer months, and then I'll turn inside to work on the house once we get to the colder months.
And I have to intervene because I told Mary, and I was adamant that Mary had to have a life.
Yeah.
And I did get involved in some things that had to be done that were not done properly from a legal perspective. And I brought that dimension in. And I think qualitatively we are seeing a shift.
Thank goodness.
But thank goodness, because
Thank goodness.
you do know the caregivers.
A shift in quality of life?
Well, for my life.
For her
Yeah,
life.
right,
For her
sure.
life. Yeah.
I was, you know, and I ended up in the hospital with an anxiety attack, which really, though, my triglycerides were off the chart, so I'm not sure if it was, you know, it was real. And so I realized it's like, okay, I have to do something about this. I now, you know, have 4 different people that come into the home, but it takes such close management.
It's full time.
You
right?
cannot just
full-time,
allow
right?
anyone in your home. So you really have to carefully interview these women or men. And my mother is very fearful. She's very fearful anyway and very anxious. So, and she likes everything very routinely. She was a little obsessive compulsive before, and now with this.
With the Alzheimer's, you've got to
maybe you
have
want to talk
structure.
about that.
Everything
talk
has
about
to
the
be
structure
very,
and that,
very
'cause
linear.
I had shared with her as well as with others that one of the observations I've made over the years, Eric, with this dreadful thing is you cannot bring people into their environment, change their environment, make moves, including travel, which is let's go on a trip.
Right.
It will be a trip.
You'll go on a trip.
You'll
regret your trip.
You'll
for
be
years
so
to come.
sorry. But can we shift back? I
Yeah.
wanted to hear from Mary because, and I brought her on because I respect her as far as her decision. I watched that whole process, and it's a decision that many people are going to have to begin to make.
And are making.
And
every
are
day.
making.
Yeah.
And they're not making them with coaching or advice. They're just winging it. And you really can't wing this thing.
Well, and, let me talk about that. First, I just
Okay.
want to honor you for
Yes.
how you've done.
Yes, isn't that amazing?
I find no greater joy. I've been in this business 20 years. I find no greater joy than working with the caregivers
Yes.
who give so much.
Yes,
I've
they
run
do.
an adult daycare, so I partner with caregivers. I've been at the association, worked at a nursing home, and I'm always astounded. So kudos to you because
Yes.
there's nobody out clapping for you. And,
Right.
So at least personally and from the association, we applaud what you're doing. Here's the thing. We've determined, we really believe that with the right amount of information, education, and support,
Okay.
that we can help caregivers and people with dementia live better lives.
Okay. Qualitatively better
Because
lives?
of
Okay.
just exactly what you were saying.
Okay.
Because we know we have Dr. Mary Middleman come in November, and she's the leading psychosocial researcher. She's found that if people with a blind, it's a full research, and she found that people who had a plan, who met with somebody and put a plan together and put some support and education, they were able to keep the person home 18 months longer.
Oh,
You talk about making a
that's
difference in your
good.
finances.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
So, so we're really excited to have her in November because that's just groundbreaking.
I would like
type
you to
of-
extend me an invitation.
Absolutely,
I will definitely
absolutely. And so, at the Alzheimer's Association, we have staff. We have the 24/7 helpline,
come. Yes.
and I go in. I'll talk to our helpline staff, and I'll be like, "What's going on?" And they'll say, "Okay, that was a 40-minute call."
Wow.
And when I used to do the helpline, I'd get a call and it'd be 40, 50, 60 minutes, that first time call. And they'd get done, they'd apologize to me. Like,
Like
I'm sorry I've taken your day. I was like, well, that's actually what we
We
do.
do.
But even more than that, that's what we want to do. I mean,
Right,
this is not
right.
like we're having
Yes,
to,
yes.
just take the phone call
Yes.
because we have to, but it's our passion. You will not find a more passionate group of folks than at the Alzheimer's Association to really deeply care. But also to then connect, because it's that information. And I was at a support group. I used to do a lot of the teachings in the area on the education and about the disease and going over the brain and resources and all of that. I love that stuff. And I had this man, he came into a support group, and I was out visiting, and he was talking about his mom, and he literally beat the table.
Oh.
He was angry. She's doing this on purpose. She's doing it to spite me. Have you felt that? And you just like,
Yeah, I really know better. But yes,
you know better.
You know better,
you know
but it
better,
does.
but that
of
doesn't
course.
change it, right? And
Right.
so you're like, and he was angry, just, I mean, angry. He came to that group, pounding, he's a big guy, he's pounding on the table, and I was like, okay. You know, so we took time, we listened to his story. I came back and I did an education. I did an education, it's like a month or 2 months later. This is up one of our northern counties. And I was describing the brain. I was going through how the brain cells die with pictures.
Oh, God, yes.
And all of a sudden he stops, a little tear pops up in his eye. And he says, I get it, it's not
right.
her.
It's not her. That's powerful,
Let me tell
Eric.
you, when you're able to help a family make that connect, it changes you. I mean, and it fuels me, at least from my position, to do whatever we can to reach more caregivers. And so we are adamant now about trying to reach out and trying to create awareness so that more people will give us a call, because we know with the right amount of information, education, support, we can help a person live a better life. And that's what, you know, when you gave her that,
Absolutely.
there's information, education, the support, when you gave her that, right, it led to the caregiver having a better life. If the caregiver has a better life, they can keep them home longer.
Yes.
And you
I
talk
love
about
Mary.
helping finances.
She is, I know what I do in terms of the money side.
Right.
And I'm very committed to the power of money. That's what the show is about. But there is a compassion component that is a part of who I am.
Sure.
And that defines who I am. And Mary's situation was just absolutely troubling, because I knew what it would do to Mary.
Yeah.
This disease is progressive.
Right.
And irreversible, as you said.
Well, you solve one problem today, and tomorrow you've got 3 more.
Oh,
and,
my God.
And they're worse.
Yeah.
Your emotions can't even keep up with the grief.
Right.
That's, yeah.
That's, and
And
I
you're
think
so
isn't that
tired.
fair? Yeah, that's what's going on.
Well, and I have it better than most people, because
Yes.
I have a daughter that worked at a Lois Alzheimer's in high school and college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Down
she's
Cincinnati.
and now she's a nurse, so she is the durable power of attorney for health issues, and I have her to talk to. And my oldest daughter is managing the finances, and I'm the primary caregiver. So, I mean, it really has been an entire family
It has been.
impacted by this disease.
Yeah. You have a care team,
We do. We have
Yeah.
a care team, and
which is fantastic.
Isn't that
Yeah, it
fantastic?
is.
I think it
I'm
is.
very blessed that I have that, though. I mean, it just,
Right.
and my oldest daughter not only does the finances, but she's also a physical therapist, so she'll come and work with mom some. And I feel so blessed, and I also, I have Michelle, which is such a blessing, and then I have another friend, Richard Dirks, who had to put his wife in a facility in her early 60s,
Yeah.
And it's been very hard, and he works with, he's very heavily involved in the Caregivers Association. And he has also been a blessing in my life to push me into taking care of myself. So it's really, I'm very blessed, and I know so many people, though, would not surrounded by that support.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine if you were trying to do this totally alone without any guidance.
And we see that.
Oh.
Just think, last year, our years from July to June, we had 1,050. Now, our area, we cover a 9-county area
Okay.
in western Ohio. And we took 1,050 new people into our system last year. We're shooting
Woo-wee.
for 1,200 this
My
year.
God.
1,050 new people who've called us, and this is in a 9-county area. Our county is 1.2 million in total population, estimated 30,000 people with the disease. And each story is unique. Each story is valuable, and we're just scratching the surface. We haven't even touched. And my dream and vision for us locally, and I know as the Alzheimer's, is that we continue to push to reach out so that no one has to go through this alone.
I think that is so admirable. And I know you can say, well, this is our mission, but I'm going to tell you that there is not a day that goes by now in my private practice where I am not getting these kind of calls. And as I said, the couple that called me at 5:30, and I had an incredible day, and actually I was in my bed
It was
answered
such a long
the
day.
phone, and I said, hello. And they were like, is this Miss Graves? I was like, yes, this is not sounding good. And they went on to just about their mother, and my dad's coming home, and he's got Parkinson's. And Mom checked him out because she wasn't going to pay. And I was like, whoa, I am not functional right now.
And remember, you're not alone as a professional.
Exactly.
And
Right.
that's why,
Right.
our 800 number is crucial. And, last year we processed through our helpline 1,800 individuals called us for help with almost about 5,000 to 6,000 calls. And
Oh my goodness, Eric!
if you
all
call
need
us,
some more money.
Oh, hey, I like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
you
not
gotta
just
staff
for not
up.
just for
Yeah,
ourselves,
yeah.
but just to grow, because we know this is going to triple.
I know it is.
And,
Oh God!
and I
Very
swear,
hard.
I go to church. One day I was at church and there was a line. I literally had 3 people, 1, 2, 3, come and talk to me about their parents. Now, I love it. It's never a complaint because I love our friends at church,
Right.
and like you. I mean, they're going alone. If I can be a support, I don't care.
That is so amazing.
I'll do that. But it's like, it's mind-boggling. I mean, I see it everywhere. I hear it. Of course, I work there, so I think about it all the time. But I think that the general awareness in our community has so increased. And we're working on that too. I mean, we're literally, we count the number of media impressions that we get, not because it's about the number, but it's because it's about
impact.
the message.
Yeah, the
And we
impact.
know
Yes.
the other thing that's important is as more people talk about it, more people stop hiding and can come out.
Right.
And that's what's really
Right.
beautiful, is when you get a family that's, they're pretending it isn't there, and you start working with them, and all of a sudden, once they stop pretending, they're ready for help.
Let me ask you a question on this
Immediately.
subject.
Immediately.
Immediately.
Well, yesterday. Then they
Okay.
realized they should have told you
Immediately.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Immediately.
What comes to my mind, and as I'm looking at this disease and the denial that so many families are into, there are people that have active Alzheimer that are driving cars.
Absolutely.
The family
Yeah.
will
Oh,
not
yeah.
take away their car.
Well, let me hit 2 issues
Okay.
with that. There are people with Alzheimer's who are so early that they're still able to drive.
Okay.
So we have an Alzheimer's Association early stage program, because now we're starting to get people call us and say, I have this disease.
Oh my goodness.
7 years ago, I took my first phone call, and this lady called, and she said, you talked about us, but not to us. And I was, I was like, in the cow fly over the moon, I mean, what's this about? And she says, I have Alzheimer's, and I came to your program, and you talked about me, but you never talked to me. And I was like, whoa. And so we started creating early stage programming, because now we're getting people calling, because they are identifying earlier. So there are out people driving, but there are also the folks out who are driving that shouldn't be.
And how do you know the difference?
How do you know the difference?
Yes.
This is
need
what
to
I
know.
would tell
Okay.
you. If you don't want to ride with them, then it's time for them to stop driving.
Okay.
Okay, I had somebody, they said, well,
That's a good one.
I'm not sure Mom should be driving. And I said, well, do you ride with them? They were like, no. And I was like, why would you put them on the street with my son?
Right.
Right.
If you're afraid for your own life,
With them.
with them, why are you going to put them on the street with my child,
Right.
my wife, my family?
Right. Just get in the
Our
car with
neighbors.
them and take a short drive. It'll show up.
Really?
Yeah, you'll know.
Really, you
It'll
will
show
know.
up.
Now, the real reason they don't
Okay.
do it is because that person is still semi-independent, though their
Yes.
judgment is bad. They're not adjudicated incompetent. There's nothing that says that you can just go and take. We've had people who've disarmed a car, moved cars. The person calls the police, and the police go and tell the family, if you don't return the car, we're arresting you for theft. And they're like, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. The
Wow.
legal and financial system is not prepared for what's ahead of us.
I gave my brother
Okay.
the car. It disappeared.
It disappeared.
So, it
Yeah.
just wasn't an option anymore.
Yeah.
It was gone.
And I told her, we're giving the car to David.
Yes.
And some people get it. Now, on the other side, we're starting to get people. We've had people with this disease hand the keys and say, you know what, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
Really.
And what's interesting is people, as they accept that this disease is around and that they might have it and that they do have it, what I find is then they can give their children the gift and their spouse the gift of walking through this disease with their head up and living the best life possible as they go forward.
With no shame.
With no shame. Now, would I
That's
do it? I'd
beautiful.
probably hide like a chicken. I mean, I don't know. It's all theory for me, right? It's all theory for us.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I'm
I'm sure
starting
we're
to
faced with
see,
it.
I had a friend, they weren't telling his mom. They wouldn't talk about Alzheimer's. And they said, should we tell her, shouldn't we? And I was like, here's the deal. I was like, when you go visit, nobody talks to her
Right.
because everyone's afraid they're going to say the word. And I said, so what you do is, even though you're around her with love, you've isolated her because there's fear, right? You can't share love with fear.
Ah, that's good.
And I said,
That's
I said,
good.
now, if you tell her, you better be prepared. She might be upset, angry. I mean, so I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. So he went to see her, and he came back. He's like, we told her, and it's like, wow, it changed. Everything changed.
Right.
And she's like, her response was, oh, that's what's wrong. Thank you. Right? She
right.
was
She was
thankful.
relieved, probably.
If a family can come out and talk about it and deal with it, and then again, we have staff that will sit down with a family and help them care plan.
That is
We
wonderful,
go through the
Eric.
stages. There's 7 stages according to Reisberg's scale. 1, 2, and 3 are 1 is normal, and 2 and 3 are preclinical. That's what we're talking about. 4 is the earliest stages where the person might notice and the family might. And we will train families on those stages. And this is really important for financial planning because I can walk you through the stages and then I can tell you how you need to plan financially. We do a whole training on resources and I lay out, if you spend X amount of money at home
Right.
with a little daycare and a little home care, it would cost this much. Most families hold all resource till the caregiver is in the hospital, sick. The second leading reason for placement in a nursing home is caregiver health,
Yeah.
right? The first
Yeah.
leading is the person's health, right? They have something, a fall or something, so it makes sense. The second leading reason for placement in a nursing home is caregiver health.
Wow.
And you know, we try to teach if a caregiver can take care of themselves, what you did, Mary, is perfect. You have a team. You've split the duties. You know, most caregivers try to do everything themselves. And
Oh,
I-
God.
I
I
was
see it
trying.
over and over.
Yes, you was.
I was
yeah,
trying.
yeah, until you're dead, and then
You
you
know.
know, and then you have to, and then you're
And
still
Mom's
trying to
here,
hold on.
yeah.
So
From the grave.
again, this is where I keep coming back to this phrase. We really believe with that right amount of information, education, and support, that we can help a caregiver live a better life. And I mean, that's part of what you do, and so we're about connecting with others in this community who believe that as well.
Can we talk about the issue of the legal? Because I found that fascinating before we were on camera about your experience with going to Columbus, but the definition of if a person is not legally determined to be incompetent and what that process is about and how that can be used.
Yeah, this is a real messy one, both in financial decisions and in healthcare decisions. So here's the thing, in early stages, so, and again, I'm using our 7 stages, stage 4, even stage 5. The person looks normal. We could
Yes.
actually have them sitting right here with us and they'll keep on with the conversation.
Absolutely.
Right, for an hour.
Yes, for an hour.
You know, for an
Yeah.
hour. They might be able to hold on. But again, one of the warning signs is bad judgment. The ability to decipher truth and non-truth, the ability to you know, make decisions gets wearied. And it's good on some days and bad on others. So you might, you know, think, well, Mom's doing great here, and the next day she's writing a $5,000 check to some shyster at her door, which we
21,000.
Okay, there you go.
21, that's right.
Yeah,
Oh my
I need to
goodness.
go more door-to-door
Yeah,
sales.
yeah,
evidently. So, not really. It's abuse. I mean, it's neglect.
It
and
is. That's
abuse
elder
in our
abuse. That
community.
is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so let's take this situation. We write a $21,000 check. You try to go to a judge, let's say, and say, she's not competent, right? She's signing over, I need power over her money. Well, she gets her own attorney.
She did.
Yeah, she gets her own attorney.
Oh my God. Oh my
That
God.
attorney then calls somebody, they're going to assess them. Well, frankly, they can perform well for short periods of time. Okay, so somebody comes in, they do the test. Oh, well, they have some memory issues, but they're not incompetent. Because the legal definition of incompetence is really like far along. I mean, it's much further because the state doesn't want to just take away everybody's rights, and they also don't want every child just saying, you know, Granny's a little forgetful, let me take her money, because we know there's a lot of bad stuff that happens too, and a lot of people take advantage of their elderly, particularly around drugs we see with kids.
Yeah, and I was fortunate that I had her tested before that happened.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate.
Oh, that's good.
Because otherwise I don't,
Yeah, you're on your own.
You're on your own.
And then if they don't want to be tested, though, which is back to your situation you're talking about.
With the couple.
So if they don't want to be tested, you can't go forcing the test because you have no authority.
Right.
And they have to be the way the tests are. They can't take a blood sample and a cerebral spinal fluid sample and say run the biomarkers and say, oh, yep, there it is. Really, they test by ruling out. So you have to go through all these tests. You rule out strokes. You rule out other reversible reasons that could cause this, and then you have to go based on their ability to talk to you and the family. So if they're not willing to do that,
Eric,
okay, do you see the crisis? Yeah. So if the person's not willing to do that, which often they're not, when there's problems, the family can be stuck in a situation where they're writing $20,000 checks. They could be stuck in a situation where they're driving a car
and kill somebody.
And there's nothing that can be done legally.
Right. There isn't. Yeah.
Legally.
That
and
is
people
highly
are shocked
disturbing
by that.
to me.
Back to your issues of the I know. We see it every day. Back to your issues of the finances, then that puts the whole family at financial risk.
Of course.
And so I go back. This is what I've really realized in my. I've been at the chapter 11 years. I took over a year ago. And so I'm looking at it a little different, from the director's position, just looking at things in our families, and I've really seen we are not ready. Our systems are not ready to handle this. There's people, 1 out of 7 people with dementia live alone. Okay, think about
1 out of 7 people.
1 out of 7. Now, okay, you've got somebody who's demented. Something happens and they end up in the hospital.
Okay.
They're not able to tell you who they are, who their family is. They have no identification on them. The hospital can't get a hold of anybody, therefore they can't treat.
Oh my God.
So you can go over, and one of the CEOs of the hospitals was telling me you can go into a hospital, and there are people living there for weeks
there
because they can't get a hold of somebody.
Wow.
Wow.
But they're not incompetent, but they are, now here they're beyond, they might be ruled incompetent, but you just can't
So how does a hospital deal with it? Does a hospital go into the probate court?
They go into the
courts.
And
then try to petition the court for guardianship?
But the courts don't want to just...
They don't want to do that.
They don't want to just hand over. I mean, they're there to protect us. So it's not against the courts, it's not against the hospital. So the hospitals are like, can somebody help us? The courts are like, well, no,
not
you have
me.
them. Take care of them.
Take care of them.
They're like, we need this. I'm learning things as I am out in the community. And before I was there with the families, trying to really help the families and hear those stories. But now in my role now, I'm out in the community, and I'm astounded. We went up and met with the health county commissioner up in Clark County. And I had never met with the county commissioner. I didn't know if he'd care whether about Alzheimer's or not. And he goes, I'm so glad you came. He goes, where we deal with it is closing restaurants. They had somebody that wasn't keeping their restaurant clean because they had dementia. That when they go into house and a house is being, is contaminated or something like that, sometimes it's because the person has dementia and they're living alone. And he's like, so we're dealing with the after effects. 911. If you want a whole series on our community, because this is hurting our community financially. People calling 911 7 times. The person with dementia, there's people in my house. Because that isolation, because as the disease progresses and if they're isolated, it makes it worse and they'll start, having all sorts of issues. And so they're calling the squad 7 times a day.
That's when I knew I had to move in.
Yeah, so you lived through that.
It's embarrassing to say, but I was in California and I call my mom, I call my mother every day. I call my mom and she says, I'm scared. There's a man knocking on our front door. I said, who is this man? She said, well, he mowed our lawn. I said, okay. She said, I called the police. I said, okay, that's good. And my daughter just luckily was at Wyoming High School. She helps coach softball. She's literally a minute, 2 minutes from the house. I had her run over there immediately. Mm-hmm. She had this man mow her lawn, and then he wanted to be paid. She had no money to pay him. And he was angry. He wanted his $20. Mm-hmm. And the police came, and of course my daughter gave him the $20, yeah, and he went away. But this man was he had just gotten out of Talbert House. He could have been dangerous. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, but they don't know. They do not have the skills to get through a situation like that.
But you just can't go and yank their independence.
No.
I understand the legal. I truly get it.
It is.
Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, this is a house of bad cards. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, in my estimation, given the fact that me and Mary are both baby boomers, mm-hmm. I mean, no question, and there are 10,000 of us a day mm-hmm. exiting, and many of us are Alzheimer candidates. Yeah. No question. The numbers are just staggering. Mm-hmm. And if we do not have a health care system, because long-term care is not covered by Medicare. And you tell seniors this over and over and over again, which is, I am so sorry. Alzheimer is not under Medicare. Right. Alzheimer is custodial care, long-term care. And if you do not have the financial provisions through long-term care insurance or your resources, then you are going to spend down into Medicaid, which is for indigents, people that have nothing. And families kind of go through that like, what? Oh no, I've got Medicare. It does not matter. Right. Medicare is not going to cover Alzheimer. Correct. So it becomes just a very difficult situation. It does. In the remaining time that we have, I'd like for you to kind of give a summary, because we cut you short on those other points. Can you go through those and then again give your number for our viewers? And let's conclude this with the hope that family will step to the table.
Sure. So let me just sum it up this way, that if you have memory problems that are causing concern and really causing you problems in your day-to-day life, there could be a concern. That's a great place to give us a call. If you see it in a family member, call. So our 800 number is 800-272-3900.
800-272-3900.
Yeah.
Got it.
And honestly, that's where I tell people, just start with us. We don't do everything, but we'll connect you. We'll connect you to doctors, we'll connect you to resources, we'll connect you to education classes. We will try to connect you to support groups, our staff where we can sit down one-on-one. So regardless of your situation, we can get you connected in your community to help.
Good.
And so the earlier you start, the better, as with all things.
Earlier, better.
And so that's really important. So if we encourage that, that's great. And you asked for leaving with hope. So I'll leave with two things on money. Is number one, medical research. Cancer, Alzheimer's, or cancer and heart receive about $5 to $6 billion a year in research. Okay, AIDS $3 billion. Alzheimer's gets $500 million. That's all. That's it. So now, you know somebody, right? My dad just had heart surgery. He would have been dead without it. We know people who've lived through cancer.
Yes, we do.
Cancer survivors. Name one Alzheimer's survivor. We don't have any. No. And it's because we need to make an investment at a national level to increase. So how do we do that? The Alzheimer's Association has our annual Walk to End Alzheimer's. Most of them are in September and October. If you go to our website, alz.org, you can go. What's really beautiful, and I'll kind of leave with this, is that as we grow the awareness, as we get these conversations happening, they're happening more and more. I'm doing more and more of this. we raise the awareness level, and as we raise the cause level and get the boomers really engaged in this issue, they will make change. And so our walks are not, they're not just, they do raise funds, okay, and they do raise awareness, but they're a movement of committed people who said, you know what, we got to do something about it, and we got to do it now. Government, pay attention. We need more dollars in research. You know, we're the largest funder of private research, but it's paltry to what the federal government can do. And we know when they've invested $5 and $6 billion into heart and cancer.
Well, things happen.
Things happen. We need that to happen. So what's really beautiful, and kind of with this picture of the walk, is they started, it's branded across the country, that when you come now, and when you come, you're given a flower based on the reason you're there, and you get a certain color. People who've lost someone, you know, there's thousands and thousands of people who've lost their loved one already to this disease. You know, just walking in here, you know, we had that conversation with somebody. Caregivers, so, you know, folks like Mary who are current caregivers. People with the disease, we're now getting them to come.
Wonderful.
Oh, that's
right?
good. That's
Wonderful.
good. I think that's good.
And people, you know, I don't know if you have it in your family. I don't.
Oh, I definitely do.
But I'm
3.
I'm here because I'm just committed. I love this cause. I love the people who are impacted, and my life's mission is to help. And if you can imagine, at our walk, we had 1,500 last year. We're hoping to hit 2,000 here in a couple weeks. And if you can imagine a sea of people, I was the one doing the ceremony, and I looked out, and we have a representative of each of those 4 categories, and they hold their flower up. And I'll say, you know, if you have this disease, and about 10 flowers go up in a sea of 1,500 people. If you're a caregiver, half the group goes up. If you've lost someone, almost the rest of the group goes up. If you're here just because you care, and then the last few flowers go up. It touched me in a way I can't explain. It touched a lot of people. And I hope that that's the beginning of the movement that ends Alzheimer's. The end of Alzheimer's starts with me. And that's our drumbeat, that's our heartbeat. And so we will provide care and support for people with this disease till we get there. But really together, I think we can end this disease if we work hard, if we get our voices heard, and really begin bringing the issues up that need to be discussed.
I think this is an absolutely beautiful conclusion to today's show.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you, Mary, for your transparency.
Thank
This is difficult. And for those of you that are viewing today, I would that you would begin to look around you and raise your awareness. And if you have family members that are impacted, and I know that you do, or church members or people that are in your circle of acquaintances, keep them in your prayers, because Alzheimer, in my estimation, trumps every other disease I know. The inability to function because your brain is dying cannot be measured accurately or even properly. So I leave you with hope in concluding today's segment of Michelle Graves, The Power of Money. I am your host, Michelle Graves, a supporter of healing this dreadful disease called Alzheimer. You take care, and I look forward to you being a part of my next show. God bless you. Goodbye.